Welcome back to the UnderDawg Pod. Today we got a lot to talk about. We're breaking down week 3. We're going over the top losers, the top winners, and the top performers. So let's get right into it. This one, plain and simple, one of my top losers of the week is the Houston Texans. They fell 34-7 on the road in Minnesota. Got absolutely diced up by Sam Darnold. 4 touchdown passes, probably his best career performance from my knowledge. The defense from the Texans in this game was nothing like we've seen this year. They give up 274 yards per game. They're a top 7 run defense, top 6 pass defense. And CJ Stroud did not look normal out there. He had 2 interceptions. He's only done this once in his career. I believe it was last year at Arizona. He had 3 interceptions in a loss. Texans struggle here after the big win at home against Chicago last week. Copel, what's your thoughts on this one? Minnesota, they keep rolling.
Yeah, Minnesota looks fantastic to start the season, especially after getting that win over San Francisco. They had that big win over the Giants in the first week, but no one really considered that to be a big win considering how bad the Giants were supposed to be. So once they beat San Francisco, I think that put them on the map a little bit. Just when you take into consideration who they lost, I mean, Hawkinson's hurt. Jefferson was banged up already. They got a new running back there. So the team is a little bit different, but it's operating well so far. So that's very encouraging to see if you're a Minnesota fan.
One of the guys that they brought in that I thought really stuck out in this game, we've seen him do it throughout his whole career. Aaron Jones, he had a great game. 19 carries, 102 yards. He also had 5 catches for 46. So he's clearly shown that he has been a major factor in that offense. It's not just Justin Jefferson. They have another star out there making plays. Their rookie, Jalen Naylor, also was able to find the end zone. And then Johnny Munt, who's been there for a bit, also was on the other end of one of those touchdown passes from Darnold.
And I'm going to go into my first loser of the week, which is going to be the Cleveland Browns. Talk about a pretty brutal week. I mean, they lost the New York Football Giants, which is pretty hard to do. When you look at the numbers and you dive a little deeper, I mean, Deshaun Watson actually had a pretty decent game himself, but the rest of the team did not play up to par. I mean, Malik Neighbors absolutely chopped this defense into pieces. 148 passing yards from the Browns, which is not a lot when you look at the numbers. And then as a whole unit between Jerome Ford, Deshaun Watson, and Devontae Foreman, I mean, they're putting up 69 rushing yards against a Giants team. And their defense is good, the Giants, but 69 rushing yards is not going to cut it against a team like the Giants. You need to be able to run the ball all over them and, beat them in the possession game and manage the clock well. They also allowed 8 sacks. So the offensive line played awful for Cleveland. They also fumbled the ball twice, so they're not holding on to the ball good enough. They had way less possession time than the Giants, which is a big reason why the Giants actually ended up pulling out with the win. When you look at Daniel Jones's numbers, I mean, he only had 10 incompletions, which, if you're making Daniel Jones look like that, you had a bad week. So a really bad week from Cleveland. Pat, what did you think about Cleveland?
I think this was very similar to the Jacksonville game. It really doesn't show much progress. You come at home against a Giants team that is definitely not a playoff form team. I think most of us were expecting Jacksonville to at least have a better start to the year than the Giants. But one of the major reasons why Cleveland may be struggling right now is, like you were talking about, the run game. Nick Chubb is still out with that injury he sustained last season. That's been a major problem for him. Deshaun Watson, it seems as though his prime has been wasted. So there's a lot of issues with that Cleveland team, especially up front in a division as tough as the AFC North. They can't afford to lose games like this. You see the Steelers rolling at 3-0, Bengals and Ravens both slow starts, but those are 2 teams that everyone expects to get into the postseason. So Cleveland needs to figure things out and have any chance at the postseason or even a wild card. And we'll have to see what Stefanski can do to switch things around in Cleveland. Going into my next top loser of the week, Miami Dolphins. It just keeps getting worse for them. 24-3, they got routed in Seattle, low scoring game. The thing is that I found surprising, the Dolphins defense is 11th in the league. They got smoked last week against Buffalo, but their defense has given them opportunities to win. The offense has just not been there. Obviously, Tua's out, but they do have so many stars on that team. Tyreek Hill, Devin Achane, Waddle, who they drafted out of Alabama. I mean, you got to expect a lot of producement from him, and they just haven't really gotten anything. Tyreek Hill's stats over the last 2 weeks, nothing like him. 3 for 40 last week, just 5 targets. The week before, he had 6 targets before being pulled from the game, just 24 yards. So they really need to get those 2 going. if they're going to have a chance. Because like we've talked about in the past, I mean, the AFC East is wide open. Obviously, New England, nobody expects them to do well. Jets, maybe they're emerging as a playoff team. The Bills are rolling, but Miami, everyone has high hopes for them. Fans of the Dolphins right now are as confused as we are. And so, again, another team that horrible start to the year. There's a good thing that there's 17 games because they have a lot to figure out. Is this a team that's going to have to pick up a quarterback off free agency? Because right now the QB situation doesn't look good. Skylar Thompson started the game. We saw Tim Boyle come in, but again, nothing too promising from the film. I believe they're back home next week, so we'll have to see if they can get something going on. But they are definitely struggling, and the defense can only do so much for them.
And I'll just touch on Miami just a little bit. Miami's defense, like you said, is in the top 11. That's not what the NFL community thinks of Miami. When you hear Miami, you think about that West Coast offense that McDaniel brought over. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's weird to see Miami's offense struggle, and obviously that's because Tua is not there. That's their power, and their team is their offense. And without a quarterback running the show, I mean, they can't even run the football anymore because they're falling into negative game scripts and they have to pass it, and they don't have the right quarterback with the right arm or just the right skill set in general to even, keep them in a game, never mind win one. So yeah, Miami's definitely in a tough situation right now, and I feel for them.
Well, next week they're on Monday Night Football at home. They're playing Tennessee, so that's got to be a get-right game for them. You win that, you're back to 2-2. You're at zeros. So see if Miami can figure it out. They got to get Tyreek involved and Devin Achane, who has had a decent start to the year. He's not a big yards guy on the ground, but he's a guy that they like to use when they get close to the goal line. They expect him to get in and score. But the problem is, are they going to get those opportunities with a guy like Skylar Thompson running the show back there? How many red zone trips are they going to get? And if they do get the red zone trips, how many opportunities are they going to get to score? Because Tennessee right now, 0-3, like we expected. They're supposed to be a horrible team this year. And so if Miami drops this one, that's just insult to injury right there. And they are now going to be in a pretty deep hole down at the bottom with Patriots.
So I'm going to head into my final loser of the week, which this might have been the biggest loser of the entire week here in week 3, which was the Las Vegas Raiders falling to the Carolina Panthers at home, by the way. 36-22. And some stats that were incredibly significant to this game. Vegas giving up 131 rushing yards to the Carolina Panthers. So that right there, I mean, they're able to run all over you as the worst team in the NFL. I think the obvious question is, well, who was at the quarterback? And it was Andy Dalton this week, not Bryce Young. And Andy Dalton was the first quarterback in the NFL season this year to throw for over 300 passing yards, which is pretty nuts. And he carved up this Vegas defense, who, by the way, let's not forget, they passed on Jim Harbaugh, the Vegas Raiders, for Antonio Pierce, who is a defensive guy running that team, and they just got carved up at home by Carolina. So that is not encouraging to see. Vegas themselves only rushed for 55 total yards as a unit. They couldn't get any offense going because of the ground game, very similar to Cleveland. So you can see the trends there. And then on third downs, Vegas was 3 for 11. So that is another reason why they played so bad. I mean, they couldn't even keep the ball, which ultimately led to Carolina having the ball a lot more, and they were able to run a positive game script compared to Vegas's negative game script. And then Vegas was so badly in the hole that they had to bring in Aiden O'Connell at some point in the game, and he didn't look too bad. And I actually didn't even think Minshew looked that bad. But if you remember after the game, Antonio Pierce did say that he has some business decisions to make moving forward. So it's going to be interesting to see who that is going to be. Only 23 minutes of possession for Vegas compared to Carolina's 36. So that right there can also tell you the story about how this game went. And if you told me before this week that Andy Dalton was going to carve up this defense, I would have laughed in your face.
Andy Dalton had a great performance. That's absolutely what he needed coming back into the NFL on the road. But I really think that the Raiders are one of those teams that's just so fraudulent. And this is a division that has been owned by the Chiefs for several years now. We believe several years to come as well. But 437 yards, total yards against a Raiders team that actually is bottom 3 in the league as far as giving up yards. So a little bit expected, but you're not expecting Chuba Hubbard to run through you and Andy Dalton to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdown passes. So That's a major issue. Like you were saying, Pierce is a guy that isn't afraid to make changes. He came in last year, got a couple of big wins for the Raiders, not afraid to empty that bench. Give a guy like Aiden O'Connell who had some promising moments and opportunity. We'll say for the Raiders, one of their draft picks, Trey Tucker, big game, 96 yards, 7 catches. One of them was a TD. They finally got Jacoby Myers going. He was found in the back of the end zone. And I think Brock Bowers has had an excellent start to the year as well. So they definitely have talent on the offensive front. I'd like to see a little bit more out of the ground games. Amir White was their leading rusher, but just 10 attempts, 34 carries. So they need to find a way to balance their offense, pass heavy offense. They need to, like you're saying with the possession, they need to find a way to run the ball more and move the chains. And you can't lose home games to non-playoff teams if you expect to have a chance for that wild card. So pretty defeating loss for the Raiders when you give up 36 points to a quarterback that hasn't played. You think about if Bryce Young plays this game, is it a different story? And probably yes, the way he's struggling. You look at the Panthers, I mean, their offensive line held up. They gave Dalton time, and he was just dotting around the field. Deontay Johnson, 122 yards. I mean, he has to feel great about that. Pittsburgh clearly did not want to let him go, gave him plenty of opportunity, but it just felt like he needed a new change of scenery. Maybe he's got it here in Carolina. Saw Thielen score a touchdown. He also exited with an injury, so maybe that gives a little bit of room for a guy like Xavier Legette to come off the bench and be a weapon for Andy Dalton. Great win for a Panthers team that's not going to make the playoffs, but something they can build off. And for the Raiders, they got to find a way to bounce back. They've got 2 against the Chiefs, lost to the Chargers earlier in the year, and 2 against the Broncos and Bo Nix, who are a wild card, even though they ended up picking up a big win. That's also not an easy division to play in. Again, a game that you just cannot drop at home. So next segment, we're going to go into top performers of the week. We had obviously plenty of games, a huge slate in week 3. We're just picking out a couple of our top performers of the week, a couple of guys that were on prime time, the whole world got to see. Couple of surprises. Copel, who's your first guy that we need to talk about here?
My first top performer this week, I'm actually going to go with Malik Nabers from the Giants. He has been awesome through the first 3 weeks. This week especially, numbers don't jump off on paper. 8 receptions and 78 yards, but he did have 2 touchdown receptions this week. He also had 2 carries for only 4 yards. Those touchdown catches that he had, if you watch the game, were pretty unbelievable. He looked like OBJ in the corner on that fade route. Also, he had that unbelievable catch over Emerson Jr. He looked like Randy Moss out there. So that was a fantastic, fantastic week from Malik Nabers. And he's actually almost carrying the Giants because you can just see he's almost getting like 20 targets a game. Daniel Jones just looks his way, and he is literally putting the team on his back and helping them win now, which is unbelievable. Didn't think that would happen. I almost feel like he's dominating the way that Marvin Harrison was projected to be dominating. He got picked before him. So I think if you're a Giants fan, you should be very happy with his performance.
And with the Giants, I mean, this is a team that is known for their draft picks. Andrew Thomas, Nabers they got in the first round. He had a huge day for them, probably carried them to that victory. But this is the best I think we've seen Daniel Jones in his career. Maybe you could argue winning that playoff game in Minnesota was the highlight, but it really feels like he's found his guy, and it feels like flashbacks Odell Beckham Jr., perhaps with Nabers. He's had an excellent rookie stint so far and a long way to go, but they have found their guy. They're going to continue to throw him the ball, continue to make more plays for him. And we'll see. The Giants have always been known to have a strong offense. They lost that game against Washington, the field goal battle last week. If they can find a way to finish off those drives, get into the end zone a couple of times, their defense is always going to give them a chance, and you never know with them. Giants, they get a big win on the road, and they're hoping to continue that as well. And so for my first top performer of the week, we're going to cycle back Raiders game. We got to give Andy Dalton a couple more props here. The 3 touchdowns, 319 yards. I think the most important part was for the Panthers, they finally found a captain. Bryce Young, he's still very young, and they kind of threw him in there. We're hoping for the best. They haven't seen it much, and I think this is perfect bringing in Dalton. If he can put together a couple games like this will be perfect for Bryce to sit back, watch, and see, the veteran quarterback kind of go to work and see what the expectations are and how to lead a team and lead an offense to go in across the country to a game on the road and play as well as he did. I think that is something that we absolutely have to highlight. Panthers fans, they maybe have a little bit of hope, but at least they have someone to watch Andy Dalton slinging for first downs and finding his receivers in the end zone. So he is my top performer of the week.
I'm going to be picking Derrick Henry for my next player of the week. Man, against Dallas, he absolutely ate. He had 25 carries for 151 rushing yards with 2 touchdowns, and he also had a 23-yard reception. Derrick Henry, it seemed like this was his welcome to Baltimore party. He finally got the work that he saw in Tennessee. He absolutely took it and ran with it. And this is a game that I will be talking about in a little bit, but this is a huge game for Baltimore. I mean, 0-2, they needed a game so bad. They go to Dallas on the road, and to have King Henry run all over this Dallas defense and help you win this game was so massive that I think he actually might have had one of the best performances of the week.
Yeah, and this is exactly why they brought him in. Usually in the past, they've had several running backs, and we've seen the Ravens able to run. We've seen what Lamar can do. But bringing that power-heavy back that always can find the end zone, major lift off the offensive coordinator and, of course, the head coach shoulders, not having to on Lamar Jackson into the end zone as much. Obviously, we've seen so many quarterbacks get injured just by doing QB sneaks, and they're going to let Lamar run. That's one of his strong suits. That's what separates him from the pack and makes him different. But when you are able to have Derrick Henry in the backfield, and you don't know who's going to get the ball, even if it's a run. They have no idea if it's going to be Lamar running for 50 yards or Derrick Henry running for 50 yards. You got power and speed, one of the best combinations, if not the best combination you can have in football. We haven't seen much out of Andrews yet this year. It looks like Likely might be that top guy at the moment. Zay Flowers continues to have a strong year. So this offense looks very good. 1-2 start, obviously a brutal loss on the road to open up the NFL season against the Chiefs. They're at 1-2, but there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to go on a win streak here, sneak in the playoffs. Again, they're in that AFC North division. They have some competition, the Bengals and the Steelers. So we'll have to see if the Ravens can continue to move forward. Their defense kind of broke down there at the end, let Dallas get back in, but they played great in the first half. Another road game, you win a game on the road, it's definitely a little bit harder at home. But yeah, just a big dub for the Ravens, their first of the year. So for my second top performer of the game, we're going to shift to the Monday night slate. We had 2 games this week, another long night of football on Monday. Second pick, Jaden Daniels. I think he showed the world what he was all about, and he's proving that the Commanders have found their new quarterback. He was absolutely dominant, led this team on the road victory in Cincinnati against a team that really needed it. Every single time Cincinnati needed to stop, and they had chances. They just could not get it. Jaden Daniels, again, ran for 40 yards, I believe. He had 250 pass yards. Finally, Terry McLaurin is able to make an impact. 4 catches for 100 yards. 4 catches, not a ton, but he's able to get a touchdown. Hopefully that's the new connection, Washington. But that was great to see. We saw Luke McCaffrey getting some opportunity. He had 44 yards, Zach Ertz, and Noah Brown, one of their new acquisitions as well. Now, their defense struggled, but you're going up against Joe Burrow. Jaden Daniels outplayed Joe Burrow. And another thing, just the 4th and 4s, the 4th and short, 4th and whatever, they were just going for it, no hesitation. I absolutely love that. I'm sure the fans absolutely love that, and the people that bet on them at home definitely love that. So just a very exciting slugfest of a game, touchdown for touchdown. Even with Jamar Chase doing what he was doing, we saw Cincinnati run the ball pretty well, but Jaden Daniels of the week, and this one, his second NFL win, but I think this one feels a little bit better than that Giants win, seeing the stats that we saw from Jaden this week.
And then for my last performer of the week, I should say, I'm going with Rajee Rice from the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football against the Atlanta Falcons in a game that they were only favored by 3.5 points, and it was a close one. But if it wasn't for Rajee Rice, that might have been a loss. I mean, he was all over the football field for Patrick Mahomes. He had 12 receptions for 110 yards and a touchdown, and he also had a carry as well. So he was all over the offense for Kansas City. He is becoming, in my opinion, probably a top 5 receiver in the league. I think it definitely plays a role in the offense that he's in my opinion, completely replaced Travis Kelce. I mean, he's taking all his targets away and adds the speedy outside receiver with great physical ability, and his run after the catch is fantastic. So I think Rajee Rice is also developing into one of the top receivers in the league, and I think people are starting to finally realize that he's the real deal.
Well, they brought in Worthy, and we've seen him get in the end zone already. We've seen his speed, but this is the guy right here, Rajee Rice. Clear to all Chiefs fans, he is the number one. Even with Travis Kelce out there, he is the go-to guy for Mahomes. He's the new Tyreek Hill. He's been able to take the big hits and get up and continue to make a catch on the next play. He's the guy for Mahomes. Another exceptional performance. A game on the road, low scoring, but it just felt like every single time they needed a first down, they were going to him. And for Travis Kelce, man, is really just looking non-existent out there. Not really getting targets, and when he does, they're for very short yardage. So that's definitely a concern of the Chiefs. But right now they're sitting at 3-0. They've got two young receivers that if they can stay healthy, they're just going to continue to dominate and be a problem. And they're going for that three-peat. And right now, Mahomes, we saw him, the ankle injury a little bit at the end of the game, trying to take a knee there. I think he should definitely be good to go next week. That shouldn't be a problem. But right now, Chiefs are just picking up right where they left off, get the dub on Sunday Night Football. So, yeah, my third top performer of the week, again, going back to Monday night game, if you had Jaguars plus 5.5, you probably turned this one off pretty quickly. Josh Allen, just doing Josh Allen things from the Buffalo Mafia, threw for 266 yards, and I don't even know if he played the fourth quarter. He didn't have to. This game was over by the first quarter, at least the first half. 4 touchdowns, ran for 44 yards. Who the hell did they even have at receiver? Shakir, look at this guy. 6 catches, 72 yards, and in the end zone. Ty Johnson, touchdown catch. Dalton Kincaid, great game out of him. Probably his first of the year. He hasn't done too much. Keon Coleman, finally, his first NFL touchdown, which he, a high draft pick. We were expecting him to be used a little bit more. Haven't seen much out of him at all. Just the one catch. He hasn't been getting many targets at all. So our main concern for the Bills was just who are they going to throw the ball to? We were thinking they were going to struggle a little bit to start the season. But after this win, I mean, this is definitely one of the top contenders in the AFC. Copel, what are your thoughts on this one? Josh Allen, again, just continuing to dominate. And the Bills, I'm sure, could not be happier with his performance right now.
Yeah, Allen looked fantastic. And I said this in our Patriots-Jets video, but I really did not think Buffalo was going to be as good as they were coming into this year with everyone that they lost on both sides of the football. But Josh Allen has obviously taken the criticism and all the hate, used it this year. I mean, he is 3-0 so far to start the year. He's had primetime games after primetime games, and he still showed out in every single one of them. He also 4 touchdown passes. He's also running all over every defense that he plays. So he is literally just carrying his team with not a lot of weapons. You're talking about their second round pick they used on Keon Coleman. Like, he's not even being really utilized correctly. They're still winning games because Josh Allen's making the smart plays. And I think if Buffalo had a different quarterback than Josh Allen, they might not have a win right now. Never mind being 3-0. Josh Allen right now is my MVP favorite to start the year through 3 weeks. He definitely is my MVP favorite. And Buffalo looks like the clear winner of the division so far.
Yeah, that's absolutely a great pick. I would definitely agree with that. Bills, again, they have a top 10 defense. If you have them in fantasy, you're definitely happy with them. Looking at the Jags a little bit, they start the year 0-3. They definitely were not expecting this start, I would assume. Lawrence has not looked like himself. They have a lot of problems and a lot of things to fix. Get blown out here in Buffalo, so they're going to have to try and bounce back and find a way to get the offense going. Even with the 70 yards on the ground for ETN, they really were just not able to move the ball on offense at all, and it was just a beatdown in Buffalo on Monday. That's going to wrap it up for the top performers. We're going to move into our top winners of the week next.
All right, so for my first winner of the week, I'm going to be going with one that we already touched on, but I'm going to go with Baltimore. Baltimore over Dallas was a big game. They had to travel to Dallas. Baltimore started off 0-2. I don't know if anyone knows this, but every single year that Baltimore started 0-2, they have missed the playoffs. So that's a big deal, especially when you're known to be one of the top teams in the AFC. Baltimore really needed this victory. They really needed production out of Derrick Henry. They got both of it. They got the win. They got the production from Derrick Henry, and Lamar looked solid. It was a little close towards the end, so it wasn't a perfect game from Baltimore's point of view. However, came out with the win when they needed to, and it was a good game. As a total unit, Baltimore had 274 rushing yards, and obviously that was a lot of Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. But I think that moves into my next point. I mean, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson are here. They have finally arrived, and I think the whole world sees it. They also had 0 sacks allowed, so that Baltimore offensive line is holding up well, one in time of possession, which I think is ultimately what gave them that win. Because if Dallas had a little bit more time, that could have been Dallas' victory. So obviously, it was a scary, scary ending, but Baltimore came out with a much, much needed victory.
Yeah, it wasn't a perfect win, but at the end of the day, you play 4 quarters of football and you score more points than your opponent. It's all you're trying to do there. So we'll see if Dallas can bounce back tomorrow night, Thursday night football. They're on the road against the Giants tomorrow night. So we're going to go into one of my biggest winners of the weekend, and that's none other than the Denver Broncos. To get their first dub of the season this year. Bo Nix is first of his career. You have this +7, keep the points. The money line cashes very easily thanks to Will Lutz. He went 4 for 4. Folks, he's 9 for 9 this year to start the season. He's a guy that was in New Orleans with Sean Payton, so he brought him back over. Excellent for them. This is a team that's a run-heavy team. They like to chew the clock. They don't score very many points. You won't see him putting up 26 points a lot this season, but they took full advantage of a bad defense that usually gives up 370 yards per game. Some of the receiver production that we saw Cortland Sutton uncorked, 7 catches for 70 yards, and Lil Jordan Humphrey also with 6 catches. So Nix was able to find some receivers, gain some confidence. And again, he's been another guy that has been a dual threat on the ground, 9 for 47 for him. That's a huge win on the road against a team that has had a great start, and I think everyone expected them coming back home to just continue to move to 3-0 here and continue to grind out victories. But this one was over, I'd say, in a hurry for sure. The offense just was never in play for Bucs this week. Baker struggled. He threw a pick. Broncos 26-7. They upset the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and moved to 1-2.
I'm going to move into my next game for my next winner, and my next winner is the Commanders on Monday Night Football. We already talked about it a little bit, but with a big 38-33 win over the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday Night Football, you're talking it couldn't get any more bigger than that. Just a little bit of statistics from this game. Washington was 3 for 3 on fourth down conversions. So you saw the confidence from Cliff Kingsbury and Jane Daniels. Also, were the winner in time of possession. So if you can see the trends I'm bringing up in all these games, time of possession is massive. Daniels had no turnovers. Nobody on this Commanders offense had any turnovers, and he only had 2 incompletions the whole game. He was 21 for 23. He had 2 touchdown passes and a rushing touchdown with 12 carries for 39 yards. So he is becoming that dual threat quarterback, and he has looked fantastic. And the Commanders actually look, and I'm going to say this, they look like one of the best teams in the NFC East already.
Very fun team to watch. They've definitely got their guy, QB and Jaden Daniels there. We're going to move on to another game in the 4 p.m. slate. Divisional matchup here, we have the Rams and the 49ers. This was just a battle in LA, and Matt Stafford gets a game-winning drive going for the Rams. We've seen that story before. After a great stop from the defense, they're able to come down, game-winning field goal. Stafford, one of the best to ever do it. Kyren Williams, a huge game. He got in the end zone 3 times. He got the ball 24 times on the ground. So they have been leaning on him, especially with Puka and Cup out. So they have so many injuries. They have offensive line injuries. This is an absolute gutsy performance from McVay. And they gave up 400 yards in the game to a team that is Super Bowl hopeful once again. Jawan Jennings, got to highlight him because he had a fantastic performance, his best of his career. 3 touchdowns for him. Brock Purdy, he was his number 1 target in that game. He had 175 yards, 11 catches to go with it. And again, you can win by a field goal and playing the field position, and that's exactly what the Rams did. And being at home might have helped them. This is a brutal loss for the Niners, who have the Patriots next week at home. They should bounce back there. But this was just one of those fun, great games to watch. And Matt Stafford just doing what Matt Stafford does. A big win for the Rams as they are playoff hopeful, and hopefully they can get Kupp back sooner rather than later. Puka's going to be out a bit more of extended time, but I'm sure we will see him later on in the season. And another guy that I want to highlight from the Niners, Jordan Mason. Obviously, they're missing McCaffrey. He has been a big help in the offensive production for them. He's been a beast. They've just been giving him the ball, mostly just running. Didn't score this week, but again, he's a guy that they have to lean on. And I think Niners just need a get-back game. I think they'll do that next week at home, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate all the feedback. Just want to let you guys know that we're now out on Spotify. We're also out on YouTube. Make sure to follow socials. Appreciate it, guys. We'll catch you later.